A few years ago, I arrived a bit early for my departing flight out of Charlotte. I purchased a newspaper to do the crossword, a cup of coffee, and a package of cookies. I went and sat at a table in a common area. It's essential that you get this clear in your mind. Here's the table, newspaper, cup of coffee, and a package of 8 cookies. A guy is sitting opposite me, a perfectly ordinary looking guy wearing a business suit, carrying a briefcase. It didn't look like he was going to do anything weird. What he did was this. He suddenly leaned across, picked up the packet of cookies, tore it open, took one out, and ate it. For most of us, there's nothing in our background, upbringing, or education that teaches you how to deal with someone who in broad daylight has just stolen your cookies. I did what any non-confrontational person would do. I ignored it. And I stared at the newspaper, took a sip of coffee, tried to do a clue in the newspaper, couldn't do anything, and thought, what am I going to do? Although I tried very hard not to notice that the package was already mysteriously opened, I went for it. I took out a cookie for myself. I thought that should settle this. But it didn't, because a moment later, he did it again. He took another cookie. Having not mentioned it the first time, it was somehow even harder to raise the subject the second time. We went through the whole package of 8 cookies like this. I felt like it was a lifetime. He took one, I took one. He took one, I took one. Finally, when we got to the end, he stood up and walked away. Well, we exchanged meaningful looks. Then he left, and I breathed a sigh of relief, and I sat back. Minutes later, my flight was about to board, so I tossed back the rest of my coffee, stood up, picked up the newspaper, and underneath the newspaper were my package of cookies. The thing I like most about telling this story is knowing that somewhere in the world, there is a perfectly ordinary guy who's been telling the same exact story, only he doesn't have the punchline. We all have tunnel vision and get stuck in our patterns. When we have a broad-minded attempt to understand both sides of the coin, we grow. There will always be more than 2 sides to every story. Whereas knowledge can be obtained by seeing one side, wisdom knows all sides. Right now, someone is questioning how there can be more than 2 sides. Because there is your side, my side, the media's angle, and the way it really is. How many times have you had an opinion on something, been convinced that you were right, only to have someone else turn up with previously unconsidered information or introduce a different viewpoint, thus prompting a whole new way of thinking? Being ready to listen to another person's perspective is essential. So the next time you are convinced that you know everything and that you are right, make sure you check under the newspaper first. You might just be missing something important that will offer you a fresh perspective.